You're listening to Black Music Scene, a show where we explore the incredible journeys, challenges, and triumphs of Black orchestral musicians who've dedicated their lives to the craft, breaking barriers and defining what it means to be a virtuoso. We're here to celebrate and archive the awe-inspiring stories of our living legends in Black classical music. On today's episode, we're talking with Beverly Kane Baker, a pioneering violist whose career has spanned decades, stages, and generations. From her early training at Juilliard to her role as principal violist with the Virginia Symphony, Beverly has carved out a legacy grounded in excellence, community, and spiritual purpose. In our conversation, she reflects on growing up in a watchful, caring neighborhood, the mentors who shaped her, and the values of discipline, service, and joy that continue to guide her life. We also talk about what it means to show up fully as a Black woman in classical music spaces, and how she continues to inspire the next generation. This is Black Music Scene, cultivating community, lifting our voices, and telling our stories.
My name is Beverly Kane Baker, and I am the daughter of Walter Royal Kane Jr. and Patricia Kane Evans. I was the only girl in between two boys. Both of my parents were educators, and I didn't know how much music was going to be part of my life at the tender age of 6 years old when I first started. My mother just asked me one day, would you like to play the violin? I always tell people my neighborhood, my church, and my school all look the same, meaning the people look the same, like my mother and father. So there was a comfort there. Now, maybe years later, they said, well, that was segregation. But I'm here to tell you that back in the early 60s, I was comfortable as a little girl because everything looked the same. But then things, of course, changed, right? And my mother asked me one day, there was a lady in our neighborhood, Mrs. Davis, who taught music. And we didn't have a television, didn't have a computer, didn't have video games, we didn't have anything. If you wanted to do something, you read a book, you go outside, play dodgeball, roller skate. That was about it. So when my mother asked me, would you like to play the violin? I was like, yes, anything to get out of the house, please. I was 6 years old, and Mrs. Davis in our neighborhood, the very comfortable neighborhood where all of my neighbors knew me, knew my parents. They were all my mothers and fathers and aunties, you know what I mean? Because they looked out for me. So on Saturday mornings when I had my violin case, I'm walking to Mrs. Davis's house. I didn't have to worry if anybody was going to bother me. If I did get out of line or didn't go to my violin class, there was going to be somebody to let my mother and father know, hey, I saw Beverly down here with her violin case playing dodgeball or something. So that comfort level of knowing that the whole neighborhood was a very, very comfortable. But anyway, Mrs. Davis taught, and I walked to her class every Saturday morning. It came very, very natural for me. Loved it. I just went, even just the very first lesson, I can still, at 60 years ago, her putting the violin in my hand and, this is where your hand goes and the bow. And I went home and I played and I loved it so much at a very young age. So that's kind of how I started. But that comfort level, that village really helped me because all of my neighbors and family, they were like, you can do this. But this was during a time, this is 1963. So you didn't really see a lot of little Black kids carrying violin cases or any kind of cases. Really, you might see us outside playing. So I didn't really have a role model at the time, except seeing Mrs. Davis, this wonderful Black lady, really very nice, who taught violin. And it's like, Mrs. Davis is so nice. And it just came very natural for me.
Wow. Beautiful to hear about the rich community, the communal bonds that you had, the fact that
Mhm.
people were looking out for you, even in ways that, say, if you were playing dodgeball, was for your best interests.
Yes.
And as someone who I grew up in the early 2000s, and to hear about, you learn about segregation one way, but you don't always hear about the power of community that existed before,
Yes.
the
Yes.
close-knit sort of fabric of the community that was there before. So I find that so interesting. One thing I want to ask about when you first started playing, what was it that kept your interest? What was it that made you say, I'm going to continue to pick this up? Oh gosh, I love this so much.
Mrs. Davis is just a very, very smart lady. She actually took me and my mother to go see the Japanese violinist Suzuki in Baltimore, Maryland. Now this was huge. This I had been playing, I want to say maybe 2 years, and I don't think I was quite hooked. I mean, I practiced and I did my lessons, and I'd go home. But I think Mrs. Davis was just very smart. Said she needs a hook to just say, that's what you can do this. But anyway, she took me and my mother, drove us to Baltimore to see Suzuki in person. And and I actually met him as a little girl. And he had he had the little 3-year-olds with the violins all the way up to 16 and 17. And they were, of course, very advanced. And my mother was just, close your mouth. Um, my eyes just got big as saucers, and I was like, they're playing the same violin that I'm playing. They're playing on an instrument that looks like mine. I can do this. But just seeing how they were it was very, very strict, and everyone had their violins up at the same time and they're playing together. That thing, I'm getting goosebumps right now as I'm telling you the story, because I can still see that. And when we came home from that, I was like, Mrs. Davis, I really, really do love the violin, but I'm still like 9 years old. So what she did, she says, you need to go see a symphony concert. So at age 9, now this is we can actually maybe come back to this later, but I have a very unique relationship with the Virginia Symphony, because at age 9, I heard them in a young people's concert. And I went to that concert, and I'm in the balcony, and I'm looking over like, wow, they all have violins just like mine. But what got my attention was that I saw 3 Black gentlemen in the orchestra. And as a little girl, to me, that was like, they look like my dad. I didn't see that it was predominantly white. I saw that they all had violins that looked like my violin, but I saw those 3 Black men, and I was like, they look like my daddy. So that is something I can do. So when I went home, and I remember telling my mom, it's like, Mommy, I want to be in a orchestra just like this one. And she was trying to help me. She's like, that's nice, honey. Now go wash dishes. She no. I was like, no, Mommy, I'm really going to be in an orchestra like this. So yeah, it really. So after then, I was really hooked. She passed me on to a teacher who she worked with, named Mrs. Elizabeth Chapman, a wonderful white lady. Now I'm going back now, how things were. You just did not see Blacks and whites in a car together, walking down the street together. You just didn't see it. It's just a totally different time. So Mrs. Davis worked with her. She would get you to book 2 or book 3, and then she's like, honey, this is all I can do. Um, and when she first told me, you're going to move on with Mrs. Chapman, I was like, no, please. I cried, Daddy, Mommy, please. And they were like, if Mrs. Davis says you're going to do this, you're going to do this. Yes, ma'am. Yes, sir. I didn't have an opinion. You were kind of, that's just how it was. You were told if Mrs. Davis, because they knew it. Now, of course, at this age, I can look back. She knew what she was doing, but that comfort level, I was coming out of that. Oh, and she was white. She was the first white lady that I actually engaged on a one-on-one basis. And she and Mrs. Davis were together all the time. But they at a time when you just weren't, you just did not see it. I don't know how to stress that. So when I joined the group, and she would tell me, she says, I'm going to keep track of you with Mrs. Chapman. Don't think you're going to go to her and all of a sudden things are going to change. Yes, ma'am. And Mrs. Chapman, that, you're going to do what she says do. So anyway, Mrs. Chapman welcomed me. I was the first Black in this group. And my father, I just remember him. That first class, I was kind of scared just because the new environment. I've just gone from my home, my church, and my school thrust into, oh, and they were all very nice, but it just didn't feel, where's, Mrs. Jones. I don't see Miss Jones here. But Mrs. Chapman welcomed me. And my dad said, you just keep doing what you're doing. You just do the same thing, same strokes. Do the same thing that you've been doing. Different folks, same strokes. Yeah, yeah, yeah. So Mrs. Chapman, she took us as a group. Uh, so many experiences. We played at the Smithsonian. I just really thrived. We played at the Smithsonian, played on the steps of the Capitol in Richmond. She took us to England twice. The Purbeck Music Festival in Swanage, England, I went in 1968. I was 11 years old. Me and my brother went with this group. And we, sold donuts, car washes, the whole thing. So as far as money, one little side note I'm going to mention, part that whole family influence. My mother was one of 13 children. She was the baby of 13. So when I needed something, she was on the horn. Okay, you guys, Beverly needs a new instrument. Beverly needs to buy some strings. Beverly needs to go to England, and we've got to raise the money. And so my aunties and uncles, 13, we're telling you, they would send the checks in. And so she took us to England. And that first year, I was 11 years old. Now, can you imagine putting your 11-year-old child on a plane going to England? And my mom, this story that she tells is that after we left and she actually saw us leave on the plane, she turned to my dad and said, did we just put our baby on a plane to England? She's going overseas. But my dad, he was the one that she was all emotional, but dad is like, she needs this. She's gonna be okay. And of course, I had parents of students that were there for us, that watched over us while we were there. We were there for 3 weeks. Played wonderful places. I had been playing violin probably for about 9 years and just loved it, thrived. I practiced, loved it. But I was one of those violinists that loved second violin. First clue. And my teacher, she was Mrs. Chapman took notes. She would ask, who wants to play second violin? My hand went up. And she's like, that's weird, because most violinists want to play first violin. No violinist wants to play second violin. It's like, oh, yes, Miss Chapman. So she made a note. So when I was 14, she said, Beverly, would you like to try viola? Well, back then it was like, no. The viola was presented back in the day just kind of like as a substandard instrument. If you ran out of the violins, who wants to play viola? Well, who wants to play viola when it's presented like that? Like all the violins are gone, guys. So who wants to play viola? Well, no, nobody wants to. So but I could hear Mrs. Davis saying, "You do what Mrs. Chapman says." Mrs. Chapman says, I just want you to try the viola." So she got me one, and I had this really great violin, maybe a school instrument on viola. There was no comparison. But Mrs. Chapman said, "Go." She says, "I want you to use this viola. I want you to take time. I want you to actually play on it." And I was like, "Yes, ma'am." I did not want to play that instrument because it just didn't sound good. When I came back to my lesson and she said, "Okay, did play?" And I said, "Yes, ma'am." I said, "I just didn't like it. It was kind of scratchy and had this really great violin." And so she says, "I'm going to get you a real viola." At my next lesson, she let me use her viola, a really nice viola. And I remember the first time I actually played on the low C string, I started shaking. I almost teared up. Like the sound was so rich. I was, and she said, "That's a real viola." She says, "Now I want you to take that instrument home and play it." And I ended up playing, the violin was getting slowly. I'd still play the violin, but I was playing that viola. And so, and then at there's there are many musicians that do both violin and viola. I am not one of those. I am exclusively violist. I sold the violin. That's it. I'm done. My heart lies. I keep hearing that. My heart lies with the viola. So, and it was the smart move for me. But yeah, and I actually heard a real good violist play, and I was like, "That sounds pretty good. It's just a little bit lower." Okay, that's that's okay. And men that I liked, harmony parts. Oh, of course, the viola. It's just that's that inner voice thing. I just locked right into that. So yeah, that's kind of the sad story. And as a result, shortly after when we got back from England, I took the Richmond Symphony had a concerto competition. I believe it was 1973, and I took that. I took that audition and won. So then I was hooked. Then like the viola power, everything was viola, viola. And so of course nowadays when I do go to schools and things, I'll ask kids who picked viola. I want to see all the kids raise your hand if viola was your first pick, and the hands go up. And that just warms my heart. It's like that's my first pick was viola, not a secondary instrument. Yeah.
There's just something beautiful about the network that you had, something beautiful about the community that you had, and that you had people who would get on the phone for you and say, "Hey, we need this. We need this for our little ones," and to
Yes.
see the ways that you were invested in and poured into.
Mhm.
I just love to hear that. And honestly, that's something that we want to replicate with the Black Orchestral Network.
Mhm.
That feeling of family, that feeling of
Yes.
there must be someone in this network, this community, who knows someone who can help, who can
Right.
support in that way.
Yes. At that point, then it was school, church, neighborhood, and family. So when you put all of that together and they're kind of on the same track, so they're all making sure I stay on the straight and narrow. There was no room for me to, it just was not going to happen because I had too many people looking. And I knew, and I was very shy actually. When I was scared. I mean, I'm scared of mommy and daddy and Auntie Margaret and Miss Jones on the call. All these people. Don't tell. I didn't want to mess up. I don't want to get them mad at me. I was just that kid. I was kind of a goody two shoes, I guess you say. I want to keep everybody happy, so I better do what I'm supposed to do. But yeah, I'll just as I'm saying this, my that next year, my junior year in high school, on invitation of the conductor of the Virginia Symphony. Now, remember, I heard them at age 9. He heard me play and he invited me to sit in the back of the section, in the back of the viola section. This is the viola section that I led for 25 years. I didn't know that was going to happen when this happened, but it's almost like, God just kind of ordered my steps through all of this. It's like, yes, sat in the back of the section, terrified, came there, and just little different things about how you play in a section. What does shuffling on the floor mean with your feet? What does that mean? I had to learn. I was like, what does that mean? Or, how the inside person turns the music for the outside person on a string stand. What is that really? I mean, I'm learning the basics. That's the basics of playing. And when the conductor comes out, you be quiet and you follow the section leader. And when his boat moves, you just the basics. And so that my junior year in high school, I learned so much that year. Yeah. And then my senior year, me and 2 other girls were accepted into the pre-college division of the Juilliard School of Music. Well, 1974. This was our parents. Now, this is the whole family. We lived in Virginia, and my parents and the parents of the 2 other Black girls that got in drove us to New York every other weekend for a year to go to the pre-college division at Juilliard for a year. And as it worked out, I had family in Jersey. The other girl had family. But this is the year of the gas shortage. Look it up. People were in line to get gas. So on Fridays when we would come home from school, we got to go. My dad, he would, fill up the tank. Hopefully, if your license plate had a even number, and that day was like an even day, you could get gas. Otherwise, you could not get gas. So my dads and the other parents had to make sure they had the gas to get there. And then we would get there late on Friday night, and then Saturday morning, lessons and ear training and the sightseeing and the whole thing on Saturday, and then come back home on Sunday and had to pray that we had gas. So we had family in Jersey that would get gas cans and fill them up, keep them in the garage to be sure that we would have enough gas to get home. I mean, these kind of stories, ice storms. We were going to Juilliard for those lessons because it was so important. I remember one time, car broke down in Richmond, and we're on Friday night, and we're thinking we're not going this weekend. Oh no, we were in the Richmond bus station we were going to New York. The car broke down, and we were on the bus going to it. So, I mean, those were rough times. Okay, so but good times, but hard. The gas shortage, snowstorms, ice storms. Yeah, but that year was just really, really wonderful, and I grew. Um, I didn't go to Juilliard. I was kind of at that particular time. There were no dormitories. I wasn't. I was a kind of the shy person, and you were going to live in the city and ride the subway. I'm the homegirl from Virginia who's too shy. I just wasn't going to happen. So I didn't go. I went to University of Missouri in Columbia, Missouri, and studied with a really wonderful teacher there. And then I graduated and ended up back in the Hampton Roads area in 1983. And that's when I'm like, okay, so I'm going to audition now officially for the Virginia Symphony.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And what was that audition process like? I mean, was that one of the first auditions you took, or?
Yes. And things were just different back then. I was very casual. I was back in the area. I was married, had 2 small children, and my husband worked in the area. And I called and they said, okay, these are the pieces that there was no website. There's no nothing. You call somebody and they say, hey, this is what you have to play. And that first audition, I remember 1983, I was 7 months pregnant. And it was a very, very hot day. They were running late. And by the time they were running like 2 hours late. So by the time I played, and I kind of had a little attitude at this point, once you have kids and, I've had a little bit of life, it's like, whatever. So when I went in there, it was kind of that, whatever I play, that's it. You know, you just, I don't, I don't really care at this point because it's hot. You guys are running late, and and my feet hurt. But I got I got into the orchestra officially then as a section player um, from 1983 to 1994 through a series of events that may take too long. I was in the section. It was a per service orchestra at the time, and at the time, the principal and assistant were conductors of my youth orchestra. So when I went there, I'm intimidated anyway, because it's like, that's Mr. Marshall. Oh, geez, he's sitting principal. Oh, I better really do, I better do, good. But I played in the section. I had an opportunity to play assistant because they would just ask people. There was no audition. There was like, who wants to play? Nobody wanted to sit in those first two seats. They just no, no, no. Mom, like, yeah. I didn't know that this was supposed to be something, scary. I was just trying to say, y'all need help. Okay, yeah, I'll do it. Shoot, I'll sit assistant. I'll sit first chair. What's the big deal? So I was kind of a substitute. I call it substitute assistant and substitute principal viola for a few years in there. It was just a very casual thing. Sometimes I would get the call. I was thinking I was going to sit first, and they were going to bring in some musician from New York or Chicago to come and sit first. I would then move over. I'm like, okay. And they're like, aren't you upset that you have to move over? It's like, no, bring in somebody, I'll move over. I didn't get that invested. And that's some parts of advice. Don't get so emotionally, invested just in this one thing. Try to keep it's like, no, no, I'm still here. And then sometimes I would get that call uh, that person who was supposed to come in from New York couldn't come in. Can you move over and sit first? Sure. I didn't know that those years of me doing that and playing the solo or doing this was preparing me. I had no idea. I just took it as, okay, this is great.
Yeah.
But yeah, so.
Yeah. What did those years as the substitute assistant and substitute principal teach you about leadership and how to lead a section?
Wow. Well, you must talk with people. Nothing magical happens where you sit in the chair and when your rear hits the chair, oh, I'm a principal. I must do all this osmosis. No, you have to ask people and talk to them. And I would talk to the section. Do you need more killing there? Should I bring my viola up? I maybe talked too much, and I would ask, others, is it okay? You think, is it all right? And I didn't have any problem with that. I just didn't, it's like anything that was going to make this, better. But through those years, I was gaining, I don't know, my shell was getting a little bit hard, not bad, but just stronger, you know, because I was having that experience. And then I had 2 years where I was acting principal. And those 2 years, every viola solo in the repertoire they had must have, and actually, folks actually thought I was talking to them asking for these pieces, like the big ballet solo, Giselle and Coppelia and Ionesco, Romanian Raps, all these big viola. And they, are you talking to them about what they're the pieces? I'm like, no, no. But through those years, I got to play Giselle, Coppelia, Strauss, Don Quixote, whatever. They were just rolling out. I didn't have the job officially. So, but that didn't mean that I wasn't going to sit there while I'm here. I'm going to do my best because I could hear Miss Davis. Miss Chapman and Mrs. Kennison, my teacher in college, I could hear them kind of on the front line, like, you know what you're supposed to do. This is not about you right now. This is about what you need to do for your, I could just kind of hear them. And if some of this sounds, I don't know, a little sappy. I don't know,
Oh
this some
no,
of this sounds a
but that's the
little, but this
truth.
is true. This is. I'm being totally honest with you. This is just how I was.
Yeah,
I was
yeah,
raised like that. My dad just, if you see something on the ground, if it's trash, pick it up. If it's
right,
not your trash, pick it up.
right,
If it's, that's just what you do. So I
yeah,
did that, and then I think I shared maybe with you how after those 2 years, the principal did not come back. Well, they decided to have an audition, and there was that part of me. Now here I was. I've been sitting in the chair off and on those 2 years, plus those 2 years where I was kind of here, assistant, substituting, and all. So here I am. Finally, the chair is officially open, and they had heard me play. They knew my playing. They knew, so they heard me. They knew my sound. They knew everything about what I did. So there was that part of me that's like, okay, you should just appoint me. That little thing way down inside was like, you should appoint me because I had just done so much. But the conductor, Joanne Folletta at the time, and I do thank her because she said, Beverly, take the audition. At that time, I was assistant. So even if I didn't get the first chair, I still had that chair. But, and I was like, no, you guys, I'm thinking to myself, I didn't tell her this, but you guys know if you want me or not. That little ego thing, it's we all have it. To do what we do, we have that little ego thing that comes up. And she convinced me, she said, please do the audition. And the best decision of my career because I needed to prove, first of all, I needed to prove to myself that I could hold my own in a national audition. If she had appointed me, that little cloud would have followed me all of my years that I read up here mentally. There's a whole other segment on how our mind can counteract all of this. And she knew that I needed to have that. And at the very worst, I still had assistant. So what's what's the big deal? But that little cloud would have followed me. Did she win the audition? No, she was appointed. That word would have traveled. That little cloud would have followed me up here. That I didn't really win it. I They kind of felt sorry for well, not they didn't feel sorry for me, but let's help. And I'm so glad. I kind of get emotional when I think about it because it was the key point. I had to do that. And when I walked in, this is back in the day, there was no screens were down for like finals. This is just how things were back then. It didn't matter because they all knew they all had played for everybody. The conductor, the executive director of the organization was there, the opera conductor, the table, when you come out, and I would have to say that that's the hardest thing is to come out and play for your colleagues eye to eye and to try to get them just into that. But by that time, David, because of those years where I was doing it and not thinking too much about it, just going through the motions, those years kind of built me up to this moment. So when I walked in that audition, it could have been, who cares at the table, whatever. Okay, I'm going to play my Bartok. I'm going to play Don Juan. I'm going to, whatever. And I just laid it, I was just like, this is it. I'm thinking to myself, you all know, it didn't matter whether the screen was up or down. So the rest is kind of history. I won. They applauded actually after the audition, which they like never do. That kind of stands out. That was night that you never did that, and they kind of applauded on the table. I remember that, and yeah. So I officially got the position 1994. So, and I kept the position through till 2020 when I retired. So, all of those, what we've talked about, all of, and of course, you just thinking how, we have all of these things that I've shared with you, and I haven't even, there's so whole much that I haven't even talked about. But, um, and after, I'll have to say that was 1994. And if we look back, I mean, I don't know, I don't think there were any other Black women leading a string section in a major symphony orchestra. And on top of that, uh, 7 years later, in 2001, you probably know Jenny Snyder Kozaros. Do you know Jenny Snyder? She was my stand partner for 7 years as assistant principal. So from 2000, and that was part of in my notes. I said, make sure I get that in, of course. And Jenny and I Jenny auditioned for assistant principal in 2001 and got it. And we were stand partners for 7 years. Two Black women leading a string section in a major symphony orchestra. I don't think that has ever happened. So I'm always saying, somebody write that down somewhere because this needs to be in a book somewhere. Speaking of books, let me just share this book. If you can ever get the book, it's called, I don't know if you're familiar with it, Black Women in American Orchestras. The author is a woman, she's passed on, Black woman named D. Antoinette Handy. D. Antoinette Handy, Black Women in American Orchestras. Fascinating book. I'm listed in that book, Mrs. Davis, a lot of teachers and things, but there were a lot of Black women in particular, trombone quartets. The pictures in this book are phenomenal. You're looking at from long time ago, you know, Black women quartets and brass quintets and percussionists and drums, the whole thing. But Black women in American orchestras, D. Antoinette Handy, if you can ever find it. I think you can still find the book. But anyway, Jenny and I were stand partners, and we're still very close to this day. She was like my sister, my she was my sister, but she was like my little sister too. And we're still very close to this day. So, yeah, and wow, so many memorable performances. That was one of your, things that you wanted to talk about. I can't even so many. While I was sitting, Jenny and I, of course, did Brandenburg Six for two violas. We did many things. I had a chance to play with Nadia Salerno Sonnenberg, the violinist, the Mozart duo for violin and viola. She asked to do the piece. And then I was the first viola, so I was like, sure. I was a little terrified of that, but it was actually very fun. Jamie Laredo, got to do Brandenburg Six with him. Um, Back when I was in the orchestra as a teenager, sitting in the back of the section, not really knowing what I was doing, Ella Fitzgerald came and sang with the Virginia Symphony. And I was 16. And I'm just like, I wish I had known how great this was. I was excited, but I was 16. Yeah. I knew that she was the famous jazz singer. Now, my parents were going nuts. Oh, what? Because Ella Fitzgerald, you're playing with Ella Fitzgerald. She's from Newport News, Virginia, which is where I'm from. So they, of course, were like, she's from Newport News, Virginia. We're on the map. In 2019, the the scoring orchestra for the Lion King remake, that was okay. I get a call, and I've never been to Los Angeles. Now we're talking. This is 2019. We're talking 6 years ago. Here I am, 61 years old, making my first trip to Los Angeles. I got this gig. Okay, Hans Zimmer, the conductor for Pharrell, was of course on that score. But how things tie in, that whole family thing. When I got there, I was just so excited. Okay. But it was like, focus, focus. It's a big, orchestra. I'm in LA for the first time. I don't want to mess this up. So the first day of this, I get there really early. I think the rehearsal was like 10 o'clock and I got there at 8:30. Nobody was there, but I just wanted to be sure. I knew the studio and to get my little stuff, get my space, where am I sitting? Didn't care. I didn't care. Everybody's like, do you want to sit first? No, I don't know. Do you? I'm just not caught. I don't have to sit first. No, just being here. Well, as it turns out, Pharrell and Hans Zimmer were on the score uh, to the movie Hidden Figures. Have you heard of the movie Hidden Figures? Katherine Johnson is my auntie. Yeah. I can bring up a picture here with me with her if I can. Yeah, Katherine Johnson is my auntie. And she's one of those, I'm just got goosebumps on my goosebumps, but Aunt Catherine is emotional for me. She was the auntie that was sending the money and coming to my graduation and coming to my recitals and my concerts and everything. Well, so I'm there and I'm just trying to be lay low. I just want to get to my seat. Well, somebody heard her name and they said, you know Katherine Johnson? I said, well, yeah, she's my aunt. I was very, oh, you've got to come and meet Hans Zimmer. Come on, you've got to go meet. It's like, no, I'm just trying to get my space here. No. So his assistant kind of drags me back into the studio. So at this point, I can relive this in my mind. I'm like, okay, it's okay. This is good, but I'm not supposed to be. I just wanted to that first day to be, I just wanted to get set. Well, Mr. Hans Zimmer comes up and he's like, Mrs. Catherine is your auntie. Oh, I just love Miss Catherine. Miss Catherine, we just wondered the music was so, and I'm just standing there kind of like, I don't know what to say. Uh, and right at that point, Pharrell comes from around the corner. I had no idea that he was there. And he's like, oh, you're related to Miss Catherine? That's my aunt. Yes. Really? So it was kind of like they were more excited that she was my aunt and they had done the score to the movie Hidden Figures than I was
Yeah.
there. I'm like, this is the score to Lion King. But
Right.
how that came together, that's like, God put that together.
Oh,
There's no
certainly.
way. You know
Yeah.
what I'm saying?
Bigger than us.
So much bigger. And so we talked. They were just so generous. And I just thanked them. I said, I didn't quite know what to say. I said, it was a really wonderful score. I didn't know what to say. The music was really beautiful. I didn't know
Yeah.
what to. I just was. So anyway, I have so many goosebumps thinking of this. But anyway, Mr. Zimmer he says, okay, this is so wonderful, and so he says, should we do a picture? And I said, no, sir, no, because they were very strict. They said, no video, no cell phone on in that studio. And if we see that, well, I'm not going to mess up. Here I'm in LA. First time, I'm not messing this up. So I'm telling Hans Zimmer this, like, I'm sorry, Miss Zimmer, but I would love to. And he's like, get your phone out. You can take a picture. So when he said it, I was like, well, okay. So I'm taking my phone out and I'm trying to turn it on, and it's taking a long time, and the internet's not hooking in, and it's all this dead silence, and they were waiting. I was like, it's almost ready. So I do have this picture. I meant to bring it of me standing there, kind of just with both of them, and that was an amazing thing to just have that hook up from that, and she was so important. Miss Aunt Catherine, she was just one of those aunties that was just and just always there. I mean, I had many aunts and uncles, but she was definitely a special one. you're in the area, the composer, Dr. Adolphus Hailstork, lives here. Well, I've known Dolph, we call him Dolph. I've known Dolph for 35 years, right? And I'll give you the short story. Every time I would see him, it was this joke. I would say, Dolph, are you writing me a piece? And he's like, yeah, I'm writing you a piece. I'm working on it. I'm working on it. Well, maybe a year would pass, and Dolph, I'd see him at some function, still working on that viola piece for me. He's like, yeah, I'm working on that viola piece. Of course. Well, after that, it was just like a joke. Okay. So I said, him, it's like, Dolph, are you still working? He's like, I told you I'm working on this piece. Well, he comes to me and he actually called my bluff. And he comes to me with the big manila envelope. And I'm getting goosebumps. This interview is making me, I'm just a big pile of goosebumps right now, but he's he's holding this, he's holding this. And I can feel the tears starting to come up. And he says, well, here it is. This is Dr. Adolphus Hailstork we're talking about. And I was, I was like, and he's laughing at this point because I'm just a total mess. And he wrote a piece for me. If you go on YouTube and Google Sanctum, Sanctum, Sanctum with the Virginia chamber players. That's me playing that. But anyway, and inside of the thing, he's wrote, I composed this for my dear friend, Beverly Kane Baker, who I've admired and blah, blah, blah. So the tears are just, it's like, Dolph, I'm going to get you for this because he really called my bluff. And it's a really, really very beautiful work. That was around 1994. So very special. His works are just wonderful. His choral works in particular, geez, are just so beautiful. But I have that where he wrote this for me. And anybody that does the piece, when they get the music, that's kind of a special thing. They'll open up the music and they see 100 years from now, whatever, they'll open up and say, who's this Beverly Baker person? But that he wrote that piece for me. Very, very, very beautiful work. So I wanted to share that.
One thing I wanted to ask about is because there have been a few moments where in your storytelling where you've talked about moments of being either nervous or just a little bit scared and things like that, and I'm wondering when you're in those moments of nervousness, when you're scared, when you're maybe not so sure, what do you lean on? Where do you go? How do you sort of approach that?
I pray before everything. My faith is real important to me, but I know what you mean. Let me answer your question with just kind of telling you what I enjoy doing now is I love to coach excerpts for people that are taking auditions. And a lot of the problem that I see is not with this, it's with this. What goes on in our head can totally disrupt everything because you've preconceived, you've thought in your mind, you're all wound up about something, and you haven't played one note. Um, And we tend to do this to ourselves. I always realize for that moment that you're going to be performing, whether it be audition or a solo piece, for those 10 minutes, you are it. You are it. And in your mind, you have to convince yourself this is the best Don Juan and that you're going to hear. I don't care that you're going to hear 200. And when you go to play, whether it be for an audition, you never have that thing of, I hope you like me. I hope you like what I do. Please, anybody that's listening to that, please get your head out of what's on the other side of that screen if it's like that. If you are playing for people, draw from that. People that are sitting there want to hear you. They want you to do well. When I've heard hundreds of auditions, maybe thousands, I don't know. I'm always sitting back there like, come on, number 40, come on. Yes. And even, you know, yes, I'll even write on my notes like, yes, exclamation, yes, good job. Whatever it is, we have to kind of we're so, into what are they going to think and are they going to, is it going to be the right tempo? Am I going to, you have to go in there with conviction. And if you all like it, that's good. But if you don't, that's okay because I'm going to play this with my musical convictions. And as there's no right or wrong. Everybody brings something of themselves. That's what makes it so unique. I mean, I can hear a note perfect audition and be like, wow, ooh. But then I can hear one that maybe was 95%, but had that feeling, had that. I want that. I want to hear that person again. Not to exclude that because we of course are always trying to get perfect, but I just don't think it is there. There's nothing that is perfect. We are ever evolving, even in old. I'm doing pieces now that I did when I was in my 40s. Playing them completely different. It's like, wow, why did I do that back then? I should have done this fingering, or I should have taken my time here. You know what I mean? So just I just, we just have to kind of get out of always thinking. I think we think too much. It's just do. I'm going to do it. I'm going to offer it. And just like this is, and if you like it, that's okay. And if you don't, I'm okay with that because musically I'm offering of myself. Who is going to tell you what you did, you know, for the performance practices of the Strauss oboe concerto, whatever. No, I disagree with that. And maybe that sounds a little corny, and so be it. I'm corny. I'm older and I can be corny like that. You bring yourself to it. You bring yourself to it. And so you just have to kind of, but I've seen more times than many where we've already, our, our mind, but before one note is played, we've already gotten to the end of the piece or the solo or the audition. You haven't played one note. And so that may sound kind of corny, but no, you just have to just offer, bring yourself to it. Now, if you've done your part, now if you haven't practiced, if you haven't prepared, that's harder. It's harder to bring of yourself when there's no cake. I need, all I want to have is icing. No, you have to have the cake first. So if you know in your mind, and every musician knows deep down whether they have or not. I've had this recurring dream or nightmare. I don't know if this is what this means. If you're a dream interpreter, maybe you can help me. But where I've walked out on stage in front of the orchestra, I'm going to play a solo. I have no idea what I'm about to play. And I'm walking out in front of the orchestra to play a solo. I don't know what I'm going to play, but I'm going through the whole motions. I go out there, I bow, everyone's applauding, and I can feel the anxiety because I don't know what I'm supposed to play. and I wake up. Now that has never happened. Thank God, that's never happened to me. But I always wonder, why do I every now and then? And it's usually if I have something that's big. Now I don't have as many big things going now as maybe as I did, years ago. But I always wonder, what does that mean? But I'm saying, if you have done your work in the practice room, going through your scales and etudes as far as strings playing, I'm talking about. You've practiced, you've done everything you can do. Then there's at some point where you pack it up. I've done. And so I'm just ready to like play. I'm just going to play now. If you've done that groundwork, then when that time comes, you just draw from that. If you haven't done that, then it is very hard to not feel anxious and nervous. And I don't know. But those things, that little touch of where the heart's beating a little bit, sometimes some very magical things happen musically. And it's not so perfect, but it's musical and feeling. I want to hear that more of. I can go get a CD, or I'm sorry, I can listen on a who buys CDs anymore, right? But I can listen to a perfect performance and be totally unmoved, and I can say that was a perfect performance, nothing to, but I want to hear maybe that last note wasn't just, maybe that top note didn't quite get it, but boy, you went for it. That's what I want. I want to hear that. I still do. And as I coach, I always say, go for it. Well, I'm afraid. You've just are you've by you saying I'm afraid. I don't know. You go for it, because if you don't go for it, you will certainly miss it. If you go for it, you might get it and you might not. But if you don't go for it, you're never gonna. No. So go for that top note. Go for the top note, and you just might get it. It's not the end of the world if you don't. If your whole performance is based on one note, not speaking or not hitting that top run at the Don Juan death run for the strings, it's a real no. So get out of this. If you have prepared, staying driven in this business, I guess, is hard. Um, don't let the nose define you as a musician. Okay, when you have 100 people showing up for one spot, you kind of have to say, okay, what are the odds here? So when you go into it, you just kind of have to don't be focusing in on that. Just you take your 5, 6, 7 minutes and leave it, and leave it on the floor. Do it, leave it on the floor. You walk out, do your thing. Thank you very much, and I'm done. Go home, have some cheese and crackers and some of your favorite drinks, whatever, and just chill out. Yeah. And don't beat yourself up over stuff. I've seen that, to where I've just like, go put your instrument up. I don't want to hear you play. We're going to talk right now, because you can't do it. That's a piece of wood with some catgut or whatever metal strings on it, and it can't do anything sitting there. It's what you bring to it. So let's make sure that what you bring to it is in the best shape, mentally, emotionally.
We're getting towards the end of our time here. I wanted to ask just questions that surround that of race, difference,
Mm-hmm.
the changes that we'd like to see in our classical environment.
Mm-hmm.
I'm wondering, what are some of the things that have been sort of challenging for you? I mean, was there a way that your family and your parents sort of prepared you, like to get ready to go into these types of environments, or what? Yeah, I guess we could start there.
Yeah, you know, going back, I was the first Black girl in this string group. And after I joined, my brother joined. And then
Yeah.
after I joined, Paula, my other Black girlfriend, joined. And then my other girlfriend, Cecilia, joined. And then, oh, Debbie, who started, she started. So we were slowly, not that we weren't trying to say, hey, here we are. We were just following our hearts. And
Mm,
I credit my my parents, mainly dad.
mm,
He's just smart man. Just do what you've been doing. I never I didn't feel this. Not that this, I'm sure this has happened, and I know that it is out there, but I never felt like I can't do this because I'm a little black girl.
mhm,
I was proud to be a little black girl. I'm an old black girl now. I followed my heart. I truly, truly, and actually, when I first started, it was very difficult because at that time I was actually kind of I was too white for some black folks. They were like, you're, this is in the 60s we're talking about. What are you playing the violin for? That's a white thing to do. And then the white parents of some of those kids in that group, we found out later, gave Mrs. Chapman a hard time for letting us in the group. We never knew about it. Mrs. Chapman never ever let us know about it. But so as a kid coming up, I had to really want this because it just wasn't a cool thing back then. Now, of course, all those friends that kind of teased me back then about, they're like, oh, your career is really great that you're in music and you did really wonderful. But I said, but you really gave me a hard time for being a little black girl playing the violin. The violin is not a white thing, but it was presented to me like that. And as a black child, you're like, no, I'm black. I'm still black. I just like the violin. It just made sense to me. My dad would break stuff down to me because there was sometimes I'm crying in my room because I'm trying to fit in this box that just wasn't going to let me, you know. So that's when my dad was like, you stay on the straight. That's their problem. On the left and the black, and that's their issue. So I think I'm encouraged seeing BON, seeing you do something like this. We just didn't have this. Seeing Gateways Music Festival and Sphinx and all the things that are coming up over in the Chiniki, and these things are popping up. I'm getting goosebumps now, and my heart is just full. So for me, I'm just like, keep let that let that bulldozer keep rolling, because things are just rolling and rolling out now. And when I was coming along, I didn't have that visual to see, but now I can be a visual that for a black girl to say, hey, I want to be principal of a viola section or a violin section, and I'm a black woman and I want to do that position, and she did it, so I can do it. My heart is full. I think we just have to that steady drop of water on the rock. Keep having programs like this, talking, finding out, because even and it's so wonderful that I've had to go through this. My daughter kind of laughed at me because I'm old school. So it versus me like typing out notes or anything. I wrote on paper. I have like loose leaf paper here, and it's all over the place. And they're like, "Mom, you've got all this paper. Don't show him your paper. I've written notes and things like this." But no, that there's so much happening now, and just trying to just stay as focused as possible. Do what control what you can, and what you cannot, you really have to just let that go. It's like, I cannot focus on that. What I can make a difference with, how I sound, how I represent myself in this business, and that's your problem. And if you have a problem with me because of my race, that is your problem. I'm not going to try to convince you of something. I'm just going to do, I'm going to let what I do speak for itself. And that in itself is going to, whether it be change your mind or give you a new perspective, Because when we were coming up, like I said, you just didn't see little black kids playing when I was 9 and 10. And now my heart, when I go to the school system, and Newport News school system, Mrs. Davis, my first teacher, she started that string program like in 1962 for the whole school system. She had one violin, one viola, one cello, and one bass. And I think she maybe played viola. And now, if you Newport News City String Program, one of the biggest in the state. Just they just do, And I'm thinking Mrs. Davis did that in a time where in early 60s, late 50s, you didn't see nice black ladies teaching violin lessons out of their house in the neighborhood. So that connection there. So I'm just here to say, David, that those keep it coming. These things. I want to see more of these types of podcasts and just getting, my heart is full. Every time I go online, just I'll see things from, Black Orchestra or the Gateways and the brass quintet is over here and Chiniky's doing this and this young black artist and fellows. I do want to say that. I'm happy to see that. They have fellows. The Virginia Symphony was a little late to the party with that, but they're full steam ahead now, and that's fine to see that entity now. Like yes, we have to get our foot in the door, and that door is our foot is in there. It's like no, I'm coming. Um, and how and how I come is up to me, really, not up to you and but when you are strong and you mentally, I always just try to say just keep this more in check. If you're not working on your craft, then I can't help you because it's it's rough out there. So make sure your craft is at its best, and we are out there. I am seeing Brendan Elliott just did the Sphinx competition, came in third. I had I had worked with him a little bit. I love coaching, whether it be audition performances. I just want to help you get the best version of yourself out there, whether it be if it's how you perform, how you represent, having that little edge, how like there's a difference from going out there like we talked about and being very sweet and nice about it. No, you kind of have to drop that at the door. What black musicians can do, stay black and keep doing what you're doing. Same strokes, different folks. Really, just let and like I said, once your craft is where that's the key. Once you get to that point where you know that you've done everything that you can do to be the best musician, then it's just up to you bringing yourself to it. And just, you just have to keep going out there, taking the auditions, and just up here, just never ever, and do never try to get into their head, ever. I don't care what it is. I don't care what you think right now. Because if you do, it's just going to, you can get caught up in there, up here, and then you're just totally, I can't, I don't know if I should. All of that doubt and all of that comes up. And I don't believe, I would never tell someone not to do something. I don't care what the odds are. I don't care what they are. You can tell me those odds if you want to. Frankly, I don't have to listen to them. I don't have to agree with them. I'm here to defy those odds. I'm seeing those odds defeated every day with Black musicians every day. I can go on my, Instagram, and I'm like, oh, that fella, oh, and he came in, he took the competition and did this, and all the string the gateways and the Chicago decomposed the, oh, I mean, I'm just going, it's like it's everywhere. So I said, we're everywhere now. There is no place, that we can't go. So those, there's always going to be obstacles in this business, but I just feel like those doors are slowly coming down. That steady drop of water on a rock eventually will put a hole in it. So as long as the water is still dripping, if the water stops dripping, then we have to reassess. We have to say, wait up, hold up. No, don't keep your foot on the gas. I don't know if I've answered your question, and I don't want it to sound like some, goofy, corny answer, but I'm just speaking from experience to just tell you I've seen it a lot. I've seen a lot, and I'm just speaking from that experience.
The Black Music Scene podcast was written and produced by David Norville. The Black Orchestral Network is sponsored by the Gateways Music Festival and generously supported by the Mellon Foundation and the New York State Council on the Arts. The Black Music Scene podcast is a product of the Black Orchestral Network, where our mission is to cultivate community, lift our voices, and tell our stories. If you'd like to get involved and support the Black Orchestral Network, please visit blackorchestralnetwork.org. Thank you so much for listening, and see you next time.